Hello and welcome to Cryptid by State, Ohio. Here we are, the start of a new month, and with it comes a continuation of our Cryptid by State series. Today we are venturing into the backwoods of Ohio, looking for the creatures that try so very hard not to be found. Before starting, I did want to mention that last week, YouTube was having a few problems, and when I went to upload my video, it took 2 hours to do so. Even then, 90% of my previous videos weren't showing up, and apparently, according to DMs I received from viewers like you, my newest video wasn't showing up until around 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's hope this doesn't happen this week, but if it does, now you know it isn't from my end. So without too much conjecture, once again hop aboard the Cryptid family bus as we make our way from our previous location of Texas and make our way to Ohio. As with many of the other states that we have previously talked about, Ohio has quite a long and interesting history, but it is also home to some very interesting landmarks. One such location would be an area that we actually plan on visiting, which is the Great Serpent Mounds in Adams County. This is called an effigy mound, and it was found to be constructed on the edge of a crater left by a meteor hitting the Earth. To this day, there is a debate as to who actually made the structure, with some stating it was from the Fort ancient culture, while others say the Adena culture were responsible. Even the mound's purpose is debated, but it is believed to have served as an astronomical tool. It should be mentioned that similar mounds have been found in other places around the world, such as in Scotland. Ohio was given this name after the Seneca tribe word for good or great river, which was simply Ohio, with some writing it Oyo. The French came to set up fur trading settlements in the area, and Ohio officially became part of New France in 1663. What is interesting is that in many of the histories I mentioned in this series, it is obvious that the Native Americans were there first. But in this instance, much of the land in Ohio and West Virginia was left uninhabited at the end of the Beaver Wars in 1650. At that time, the Iroquois went to war with the Erie tribe, and as a result, the Erie were almost eradicated, and Ohio was primarily set up as a hunting ground. In 1763, Britain claimed the area from the French in what was known as the Treaty of Paris. It would then lose its territory to the Americans by the end of the American Revolution. Then on March 1st of 1803, Ohio became the 17th state of the U.S. Although it should be noted that at that time, no declaration was made stating this, and the date wasn't fully recognized until 1953, when President Dwight Eisenhower signed paperwork making it official, and its date would reflect back to 1803. Of course, we need to take a moment to talk about this state's flag as well. Unlike most states' rectangular designed flags, Ohio's is unique, and in fact isn't considered a flag at all. Rather, it is called a berget. It was designed by a man named John Eisman. It was officially adopted in 1902. The blue triangle represents Ohio's mountains and valleys, and the red and white stripes stand for the state's roads and waterways. The blue triangle has 17 stars on it, with 13 representing the 13 original colonies, and the 4 at the triangle point represent the 4 other states joined to the Union after the original 13, which would be Vermont, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio. The white circle with red center is said to stand for the O in Ohio, while others point to its symbolism for the area's nickname, the Buckeye State, which is the official state tree. Okay, enough history lesson. When looking at the cryptids that are said to make Ohio home, one thing quickly became apparent. They have a lot of unique sightings. The first of which is one that I had mentioned in my Fresno Nightcrawler video, which was called the Carmel Area Creature. I won't go into great detail, but this thing was spotted on December 12, 2014, by a 60-year-old ex-Marine and his wife while driving at night on Carmel Road in Highland County. While driving up a hill, a creature ran in front of their car and disappeared into the forest. They described it as having gray-colored skin, it didn't appear to have arms, and it was running on its 2 muscular back legs, which its knees were bent backwards. As mentioned, many link this to the Fresno Nightcrawlers, while others try to debunk it by saying it was simply a deer. Oddly enough, I must note that when I first made my Fresno Nightcrawler video, everyone was claiming it was possibly a gazelle, and I question this since gazelle aren't native to the US. Since that time, all places have removed the gazelle part and are now saying white-tailed deer. It could be coincidence, or maybe I do have more influence in the cryptid community than I thought. Anyway, deer can walk on their back legs, but I've yet to see one do so while crossing a road. Moving to a different topic, with my searches I kept seeing references to dragons being spotted in Ohio, but for the life of me, and due to my current lack of resources, I really couldn't find anything. If anyone knows any of these stories, please let me know, because I've been wanting to do a dragon video for a while. In saying all that, I have to wonder if those references weren't in line with our next strange cryptid, which is called the Crosswick Monster. This town is located in Warren County, and as such the creature has also been known by that name as well. For years, people in the area were aware of odd-looking, large, webbed prints being left in the mud, but no one knew what caused it. Then on May 29th of 1882, two boys named Ed and Joe Lynch, who were 13 and 11 at the time, were in for the shock of their life. On that day, the boys were sitting on the bank of the river when they heard a strange rustling in the reeds beside them. Suddenly, a large reptilian creature lunged out at them, and they began to run. This creature ran on four legs and was able to catch up to the brothers pretty easily. Apparently, the creature used its front legs to grab a hold of Ed, and then it latched onto the boy with its mouth. The lizard then started dragging Ed 100 yards back to a hollowed-out sycamore tree that it apparently was making its home. Three men named Reverend Jacob Horn, George Peterson, and Alan Jordan, who were fishing nearby, heard the screams and actually saw one of the boys being taken by the beast. They quickly chased after the creature and saw it trying to get its body, with the boy still in its mouth, inside the opening in the tree. Apparently, the lizard became startled by the sound of the men, and it let go of Ed and disappeared into the tree. The boy was taken to Dr. L.C. Lukens in Waynesville and was kept for treatment. The three men, along with 60 townsfolk, got together with clubs, rifles, axes, and hunting dogs, and returned to the tree that same night with a plan to cut it down and kill the beast. Halfway through cutting the tree down, the creature emerged from a hole in the top of the tree and jumped to the ground. It then stood up on its back two legs, all the while keeping balance with its tail, and abruptly ran away. Half of the group stared in disbelief at what they had just saw, while the other half gave chase. The men followed the creature for many miles, before it finally made for cover in a cave under a rock ledge. Everyone waited outside for the lizard to emerge, but it never did, leaving many to believe it found another way out of the cave. The creature was described as standing between 12 to 14 feet when on its back legs, which alone were said to be 4 feet long, and its webbed feet were 12 inches long. Its skin was scaly with a black and white color pattern, along with yellow spots. Its head was 16 inches wide, and it had a long black tongue inside a bright red mouth. Ed recovered from the ordeal, but at the time was badly bruised and cut up, along with suffering from spasms. I loved reading some of the language and descriptions given of this encounter from the original article, but I also appreciate vivid details and names being given. All names mentioned are found in the 1880 census, and even though this was the last time the creature was spotted, it lends credence to the encounter. Since 1966, Ohio has had quite a few sightings of one of my favorite cryptids, which would be Mothman. On November 17, 1966, a teenager was driving home on Route 7 near Cheshire when he spotted what he described as a 10-foot-tall gray man with wings and glowing red eyes flying in the sky. Then in that same year, on December 7th, 4 women were driving on Route 33 when they saw a brownish, silver-colored man with glowing red eyes flying overhead. The reports don't stop there, since many sightings are still occurring to this day, as well as in nearby Michigan. Moving on, we have quite a menagerie of different-looking cryptids that are more aquatic in nature. Now at this point, I am sure many of you would assume I'd be talking about Bessie or the Loveland frog, which do make their home in Ohio. But as you know, I like to bring more focus to the lesser-known ones. Although I must note that even with its popularity, not a lot of people bring up the frogmen in Ohio. The first one I would like to talk about would be the Charles Mills Monster. On March 28, 1959, 3 boys named Denny Patterson, Wayne Armstrong, and Michael Lane were enjoying some time at the Charles Mills Reservoir when something would happen that would change their lives forever. While standing on the shore, they heard an odd splashing sound coming from the black water. Suddenly, a 7-foot-tall creature with glowing green eyes stood up out of the water and started to walk towards them. The boys ran off in terror, but they claimed the creature appeared not to have arms and its feet were webbed. The police were notified, and after checking out the area, they did find prints that resembled flippers from a scuba diver. This creature was once again spotted in 1963 in a similar fashion, but there aren't many details behind that encounter. One could easily write this off as simply what it sounds like, a person in a scuba diver suit pranking people, and that is highly possible. However, keep in mind, this reservoir is fairly close to where the Loveland frog was spotted, as well as a peculiar water-loving Sasquatch that I may talk about later on, who is known as Orange Eyes. So, who knows? Moving in from the water, I found a really fascinating story about a type of creature that we rarely talk about, and that is werewolves. Yes, werewolves. Ohio is home to many sightings of dogmen, and those reports are becoming so frequent in just about every state that I swear they are beginning to rival that of Bigfoot. However, I am keeping with my classification that dogmen and werewolves are not the same thing. I get a lot of flack for this, but to me, dogmen are a creature, much like a dog or cat, whereas the werewolf normally starts as a human being afflicted with a curse or malady and becomes one, or in some instances can change back and forth during certain circumstances. That is my view from researching this, and yours may be different. Anyway, there is an interesting story from the town of Defiance, which I wanted to share. On July 25th, 1972, 2 men named Ted Davis and Tom Jones were working night shift at the Norfolk and Western train yard and saw something that would stand out in local history. At around 4 a.m., Ted was connecting an air hose between train cars when he looked over and saw 2 large, hairy feet standing beside him. As he scanned up, he was met with a hairy creature with large, sharp fangs that stood about 6 to 8 feet tall, wore only blue jeans, and was holding a big stick on its shoulder. The creature then hit Mr. Davis with the stick and ran into the forest, running side to side like a caveman would in the movies. A few nights later, both Ted and Tom saw the creature standing in a field nearby before it ran off again. Originally, Tom heard of Ted's story and thought it was a prank, but now seeing it for himself, he knew it was very real. Then on that same night, a local grocer claimed that he was also attacked by a creature, but again, it used a club. Finally, a person driving at night saw the same creature run out in front of their car. What is interesting, if not peculiar, is that on all sightings, there was a full moon in the sky. Also, when Ted first saw the being, he reported it to the police, but they never released any of the details to the public. Yet, sightings still popped up regardless. The police took the matter very seriously, but never found any evidence. They state in the original article that it became a matter of public safety. This very easily could have been someone pulling a prank, yet its victims were oddly chosen, and when reading the original article, the police seemed very confused about what this actually was. Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I kept finding all these reports on Bigfoot in Ohio, and, you know me, I tend to relegate those to honorable mentions, but the more I looked at it, the more I realized that a few of those ones needed to be talked about due to how unique they are. The first one is called the Cedar Bog Monster. This Sasquatch is said to make its home in the Cedar Bog Nature Preserve. For years, residents spotted a 7-foot-tall Sasquatch with white hair, red eyes, and a terrible smell roaming about. The story goes that in 1945, 2 teenagers from Kettering ventured into the preserve to do some camping. After a few days of not hearing from them, the parents became worried and called the police. Apparently, they found a teenager's car in a disheveled campsite, but no bodies were ever found. After that day, a fence was put up around the preserve in order to keep people out and wildlife in, but many believe it had everything to do with the bog monster allegedly killing those kids. In 1980, a farmer in Bellefontaine was shocked to find this creature apparently trying to get his dogs. The beast ran off without harming the animals, but it did leave behind 16-inch footprints and a smell of Limburger cheese. Finally, I mentioned an odd Sasquatch earlier that is known as Orange Eyes, and it is found near Charles Mills Lake. As the name implies, the creature is said to have glowing orange eyes, stand a massive 11 feet tall, and weighs about 1,000 pounds. Stories claim that at one time it made its home in tunnels under the Riverside Cemetery, but was forced to move into the forest after they were destroyed by road construction. This Bigfoot was first seen in 1963, when he appeared before a large group of witnesses. Apparently the group managed to chase the creature away. Then it was spotted again on April 22, 1968, by a group of kids. Finally, 2 fishermen saw it near Willis Creek in June of 1991. Of course, even with the inclusion of a few Bigfoot types, I couldn't include them all, such as the Minerva monster, which plagued the family known as the Claytons for years, and obviously the ever-popular Grassman. Outside of these, I do want to note that there are Thunderbird sightings which are often linked with Mothman, and in the opposite form of that is the oddity known as Bat Squatch. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you could share my videos with someone you know who may be interested in this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.